news. I'm Bakhtiar Sanova, and let's go through the main headlines. US President Donald Trump says he will be keeping pressuring Iran with a naval blockade until it agrees to a nuclear deal. Global oil prices jumped to their highest level in 4 years over the conflict in the Middle East. And the new wave of allegations focus on influence peddling inside the European government. The United States is escalating pressure on Iran with a naval blockade and calling for a global coalition. Washington says the strategy is working, but the war is already costing billions of US dollars and pushing up fuel prices. Meanwhile, Iran signals defiance with rallies at home and efforts to bypass the blockade.
US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday that Washington will maintain a naval blockade on Iran until Tehran agrees to a nuclear deal. He claimed Iran wants relief from the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, but rejected a three-step proposal from Tehran that would reopen the waterway and delay nuclear talks. Trump described the blockade as the most effective tool of pressure, adding that Iran is facing significant strain.
Well, the blockade is genius, okay? The blockade has been 100% foolproof. It shows how good our Navy is, I can tell you that. Nobody's going to play games. We have the greatest military in the world, and I built much of it during my first term, and we've been building it since. And the greatest anywhere in the world, nobody even close. And you see that, whether it's Venezuela, and they have a good military in Venezuela, but it was over in one day. It was actually over in about 48 minutes. Iran, the same thing. I mean, militarily, we've wiped them out. They have no military left.
Meanwhile, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth defended the ongoing war in Iran during his first congressional testimony since the war began.
Shame on you for that.
Hegseth faced harsh criticism, while a senior Pentagon official said the conflict has already cost the United States about $25 billion.
What they're doing right now is effectively piracy. It's terrorism. It's threatening international shipping. And our blockade is signaling to the world that we actually control that strait. And I would ask this committee, what would this effort look like if Iran had nuclear weapons? Imagine if not Iran had nuclear capabilities, what they would do to wield over any advantage they have, from proxies to funding international terrorism.
Iranian officials, however, said the country can withstand the blockade by using alternative trade routes and does not consider the war over. In Tehran, large crowds rallied in support of the country's leadership, calling on the United States and Israel to withdraw from the region.
The message from us to President Trump and to Prime Minister Netanyahu is to leave this region. We, together with our neighbors, will establish both security and sustainable development and progress in this region.
At the same time, the United States is seeking to build a new international coalition to secure shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. The proposed initiative, known as the Maritime Freedom Construct, would coordinate naval movements, share intelligence, and help enforce sanctions.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says he has discussed a possible Ukraine ceasefire with Russian President Vladimir Putin during a phone call. Moscow has hinted at a temporary pause around next month's World War II anniversary commemorations.
US President Donald Trump says he discussed a possible Ukraine ceasefire in a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking in the Oval Office, Trump said the conversation focused mainly on Ukraine, with Iran also discussed. He said he suggested what he called a little bit of a ceasefire, adding that too many people were being killed.
I talked about Ukraine, and I talked a little bit about Iran. I talked about a few different subjects, mostly about Ukraine, and we had a very good conversation. I think we're going to come up with a solution relatively quickly, I hope. I think you'd like to see a solution, I can tell you, and that's good.
Trump also said Putin offered to help on the issue of Iran's enriched uranium, but that he told the Russian leader his priority was ending the conflict in Ukraine. The Kremlin said Putin proposed a temporary pause in fighting around Russia's May 9th commemorations, marking the Soviet role in the defeat of Nazi Germany. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov said the call lasted more than an hour and a half, and that Trump responded positively to the proposal. He also said Trump believed a deal to end the Ukraine conflict was close. Moscow announced a similar 3-day truce last year, but it was not agreed with Kyiv.
President Trump has said the United States is reviewing a possible reduction of U.S. troops in Germany, adding that a decision will be made shortly. In a post on social media, Donald Trump said a final decision will be taken in the near term. The comments, which came on Wednesday, follow his earlier criticism of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz over the war in Iran, after Merz said the Iranians were humiliating the United States in talks to end the conflict. Oil markets are reacting to the risk of a prolonged standoff between the United States and Iran. Oil prices have reached their highest level since 2022. Here is our report.
Brent crude rose as much as 7% on Thursday after a report that the United States was considering military action against Iran. Prices have been climbing steadily, with both Brent and US crude benchmarks posting gains in recent sessions. Since the start of the year, Brent crude prices have more than doubled. Now it's reached its highest level since March 2022, while US crude is up more than 90%. Efforts to resolve the conflict between Washington and Tehran remain stalled. Both sides are divided over nuclear issues and control of the Strait of Hormuz, a key global shipping route. US President Donald Trump will reportedly be briefed on possible strike plans aimed at pressuring Iran to return to talks over its nuclear program. The conflict has already caused havoc worldwide. Iran previously restricted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, while the United States imposed a blockade on Iranian ports during a ceasefire. Analysts say the prospects for a near-term resolution or a reopening of the strait remain dim. Oil prices remain high over the global disruption and concerns around the planned exit of the United Arab Emirates from OPEC. OPEC Plus members are expected to consider a small increase in their oil output at its upcoming meeting, but analysts say that is unlikely to have a significant impact. For now, oil markets remain highly sensitive as the world watches for developments in the US-Iran conflict.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Wednesday welcomed the United Arab Emirates' decision to withdraw from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The UAE, one of the group's largest producers, announced its exit on Tuesday, dealing a blow to the organization as an unprecedented energy crisis caused by the Iran war exposes divisions among Gulf nations. Donald Trump said he believes the move could help lower oil prices.
I think it's great. I think it's great. Look, I know him very well, Mohammed, and very smart. And he probably maybe wants to go his own way. That's a good thing. I think ultimately it's a good thing for getting the price of gas down, getting oil down, getting everything down. They have it all. He's a great leader, actually. So, no, I'm okay. They're having some problems in OPEC.
A stabbing in North London has left 2 men injured. UK police force has declared the incident as terrorism, raising fresh concerns over safety in the capital's Jewish communities. Our correspondent Zeynep Farizadeh has more.
2 Jewish men have been stabbed in North London in what police are treating as a terrorist incident. The attack happened in Golders Green on Wednesday, where a man reportedly ran down a street targeting Jewish residents. A 45-year-old suspect was arrested at the scene after officers used a taser to stop him. He is now being questioned on suspicion of attempted murder. The 2 victims, aged in their 30s and 70s, have been taken to hospital. The Metropolitan Police say the suspect has a history of serious violence and mental health issues, and investigators are examining all possible motives, including whether the attack was driven by anti-Semitism. This comes amid rising concern over attacks targeting Jewish communities in the UK. In recent weeks, there have been a number of arson incidents in London, and last October, 2 people and an attacker were killed after a man drove a vehicle into a synagogue in Manchester. Britain's chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis says the government must go beyond words to tackle what he called hatred against Jewish people. Israel's President Isaac Herzog has also called for urgent action, warning it is becoming dangerous for Jews to walk openly in London. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer has described the attack as utterly appalling and has convened an emergency Cobra meeting. Jewish community leaders in the UK, along with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, are now calling for immediate steps to ensure the safety of Britain's Jewish population. Zainab Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Staying on this violent incident, it is raising fresh concerns about rising tensions and prompting calls for stronger action from the Jewish community.
Members of London's Jewish community have gathered in Golders Green following a stabbing attack that police are treating as a terrorist incident. Two men, one in his 70s and another in his 30s, were injured after a suspect reportedly targeted Jewish individuals on a local high street. Both victims are now in a stable condition in hospital. Police arrested a 45-year-old man at the scene after using a taser. Officers say some were also assaulted during the incident. The attack is the latest in a series of anti-Semitic incidents in the UK, heightening concern among local communities.
We've been warning about this exact scenario for months now. We've been saying that shouting "globalize the Intifada" means slaughter of Jews on England, on Britain Street, and that's exactly what we saw today on the high street in Golders Green.
All of us here, we're all terrified. This is happening so often now. People going around there about their normal lives, and this horror happens. It's happening to Jews all over the place, and we're terrified.
This is leading to the rise of extremism. It's glorifying extremism. It's bringing these extremists out onto our streets and into the Jewish neighborhood. And it's creating so much fear and so much terrorism.
The stabbing follows a string of recent attacks targeting Jewish communities, including arson incidents in London and a fatal attack near a synagogue in Manchester last year.
Families of victims of a mass shooting in Canada are suing OpenAI and its CEO Sam Altman, alleging the company failed to act on warning signs before the attack. The lawsuits filed in a U.S. federal court claim ChatGPT flagged the shooter as a credible threat months in advance, but police were not alerted. The February attack in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, left 9 people dead, many of them children. Lawyers for the families say internal safety teams had raised concerns and urged authorities to be notified, but company leadership allegedly chose not to escalate the case. OpenAI has rejected the claims, calling the incident a tragedy and saying it has since strengthened safeguards. Over to East Asia, and China holds the world's largest reserves of 14 mineral resources, which also includes rare earth, tungsten and tin. Officials say the increase follows a nationwide exploration drive launched in 2021, which has led to the discovery of 398 new large medium-sized strategic material deposits, including major oil, gas and strategic mineral sites.
The substantial increase in resource reserves directly stems from the systematic exploration and reserve enhancement efforts targeting critical scarce minerals and strategically advantageous minerals under the Strategic Action for Breakthroughs in Mineral Exploration.
Summer travel plans across Europe could be shifting as rising costs and geopolitical tensions begin to influence where people choose to go. And tour operators say travelers are reconsidering long-haul trips to Asia and the Middle East. Here is this report.
Europe's summer holiday season is coming under pressure as rising fuel costs and security concerns linked to the Iran conflict begin to reshape travel plans. Tour operators say there are early signs that Europeans are reconsidering long-haul trips, particularly to Asia and the Middle East.
Today, we're seeing a slight decline of around 4% compared to last year. March and the first 2 weeks of April were extremely difficult, with drops of around 20 to 25% in orders. Will this continue? We don't know. However, it's clear that a summer which looked very promising just a few weeks ago is now going to be a challenging one.
Concerns over potential travel disruption are also weighing on decisions, particularly as major Gulf airports serve as key transit hubs for flights to Asia. While some travellers may still opt for destinations such as the Caribbean, operators say cost remains the dominant factor. Airlines, meanwhile, are facing mounting pressure as fuel prices surge and supply risks grow, although industry leaders say it is still too early to see a clear change in travel behaviour.
To date, we've not seen any evidence of people changing their travel habits. Demand for travel continues to be very strong. It's been strong for the first 3 months of this year, where we have data to support that. So I think it's too early to say that people will change their behaviours. There may be some concern that as airlines pass on the significant increase in the fuel costs that they're witnessing, that ticket prices may be a little bit higher than people had expected, and that might start suppressing some demand. But there's no evidence of that at this stage.
Despite the uncertainty, the aviation sector remains cautiously optimistic that demand will hold through the peak summer season.
Now we'll take a short break.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenging.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. One important note to this. I'm here. Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. A new shipment of grain and fertilizers is set to be sent to Armenia through Azerbaijan, marking another cargo movement along the regional transit route. The shipment includes 7 wagons of grain and fertilizers. The train will depart from Azerbaijan Railway's Bilajari station in Baku before moving west to Büyükesik station near the Georgian border. It will then cross into Georgia and continue on to Armenia. A similar shipment was sent on April 24th when 350 tons of Russian wheat were transported to Armenia through Azerbaijani territory. A new wave of allegations is casting a spotlight on political influence and lobbying within European institutions. Azerbaijani outlet Meanwhile Politica claims it has obtained videos involving former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Ocampo discussing political goals, including influencing European institutions and removing Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Here is more.
European institutions are facing fresh allegations of political influence and lobbying linked to a high-profile corruption and interference claim. Azerbaijani outlet Minval Politika reports that it has obtained video material involving former International Criminal Court prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo and his son Thomas. According to the publication, the recordings allegedly show discussions about influencing European decision-making, coordinating political pressure, and targeting Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan.
Si yo tengo una compañía que estas cosas reducimos costos, porque tenemos, por ejemplo, yo hoy tengo contratado un tipo muy piola que fue miembro del Parlamento Europeo, era asesor legal de
Borrell.
El comisionado.
Borrell, ¿no?
De Borrell. Entonces, y ese tipo me está operando el Parlamento Europeo. Yo, desde el Parlamento Europeo, puedo cuestionar y dirigirle preguntas y apretar a la comisionada von der Leyen y entrar la política europea. Y también, es más, ahora me está descubriendo una cosa que yo no conocía, nuevísima, que es un juicio ante el Tribunal de Justicia Europeo para obligar a la Comisión a que cancele contratos con Azerbaiyán. Porque hay una cláusula que exige que Azerbaiyán cumpla con los derechos humanos, que no la está cumpliendo. Entonces, estoy abriendo ahí un espacio nuevo para mí, que es... Entonces, ¿y por qué es importante? La Unión Europea es importante ahora porque como está Trump ya abriendo camino, nos metemos ahí en un camino ya trabajado y le metemos más presión y yo lo hago eso en combinación con los armenios que hacen lobby en Estados Unidos. Entonces nos metemos ahí y empujamos una cosa que está más factible, ¿no? Que tengo que abrir la pared. La puerta abierta, empujemos la puerta.
No, nosotros fue orquestar gente, hacerles saber, miren, esto está pasando, como hacerles entender qué era lo que pasaba. Al día de hoy, por ejemplo, hoy hubo una reunión, con activistas, con empresarios, con gente que está trabajando el caso, toda la situación que involucra a los armenios, ¿no? A los armenios de... Y una que es una joven que dirige la campaña de redes sociales, porque en Armenia hay un quilombo bárbaro ahora. Hay un quilombo de que peleas internas por elecciones. No, hay que... nosotros tenemos que lograr que remuevan a Pashinyan, al primer ministro. Tenemos que sacarlo.
These recordings reveal that Ocampo has acted as a paid lobbyist connected to Armenian political interests, and that he has used networks within European institutions to shape policy discussions, including positions affecting Azerbaijan. It also alleges coordination with lobbying groups in the United States, and suggests that human rights narratives are being used as a political tool. The article describes these activities as potential interference in regional political processes and calls for investigations by European and Belgian authorities into possible corruption or undue influence within EU institutions. At the same time, the authenticity of the materials and the broader context of the allegations remain unverified by independent sources. European institutions have not publicly responded to these claims so far.
Deputy Prime Ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia met in Armenia for the latest round of border delimitation talks. The sides agreed on draft instructions governing how delimitation work, mapping and documentation will be carried out. These texts will now be submitted to both governments for approval. The meeting also reviewed technical aspects of the process, with further talks to be scheduled. Ahead of a global youth forum in Baku, international participants are arriving early, beginning preparations with a series of institutional visits. Aytan Shukurova reports.
Baku is set to host an international youth forum focused on post-colonial challenges and the role of young people in shaping future societies. Ahead of the event, participants have already arrived in the Azerbaijan capital and are taking part in a series of institutional visits. Today they visited Asan Service and the DOST agency, where they are getting acquainted with Azerbaijan's public service delivery and social support systems. The main forum, titled Empowering Youth for a Post-Colonial Future, will take place tomorrow on 1st May. Organized by the Baku Initiative Group, the event will bring together participants from 17 countries, including young diplomats, researchers, civil society representatives and students.
Ahead of tomorrow's Youth Forum, we are very honoured to be here and to take part in this event. We would like to thank the Baku Initiative Group for inviting us, because it is important for our struggle for sovereignty and independence to connect with young people from other countries, particularly from the African continent, who share the same goal of achieving sovereignty and no longer being under Western imperial domination. For us, this is essential. It is also part of our broader Pan-African vision, the unity of African peoples, politically, economically, and culturally, as well as in other areas, so that African nations can fully achieve their sovereignty.
It sort of relates back to our message for, our goal of portraying as India, that India is also a construct of colonization. That's what our message is, that India is also a construct of colonization, and it's a violent regime that's targeting Sikhs in all aspects, and that's what we're here to highlight for tomorrow's convention.
Topics for discussions will focus on the lasting impacts of colonialism and neocolonialism, from economic inequality and resource explosion to cultural erosion and limited access to education and decision-making. The forum aims to strengthen international youth cooperation, promote knowledge exchange, and empower young people to play a more active role in addressing post-colonial challenges and shaping inclusive futures. The event is expected to conclude with the adoption of a final declaration and the creation of a new international youth platform focused on decolonization and global solidarity. Ayten Shukurova, Javid Aliyev, A News.
Baku's historic old city is preparing for the International Carpet Festival 2026, marking a decade of Azer culture's global mission. Running from May 1st to the 3rd, the event will feature international pavilions and masterclasses across the capital's ancient streets to showcase the rich heritage of the craft. A News sat down with Chairman Emin Mamadov for an exclusive in-depth look at this evolution. A conversation will bring you in full in an upcoming special program. For now, here is a preview of the festival's packed agenda.
We have upcoming festival. What we do, we have a first day of forum where we have international speakers, and the theme is also exactly what we are talking about to you today. It's about exchange of how we're making traditional carpet weaving living today. And we have speakers from Turkey, from Nepal, from Uzbekistan, from Morocco, and different other countries. So first day is a forum. In the evening, all the galleries located in Old Town will open the exhibitions. And of course, Old Town on Saturday and Sunday on May 2nd and 3rd will be covered with the carpets with many events. We will have different programs for the children, for adults. We're inviting all of you Saturday and Sunday to Ichari Shahar and live experience of the carpet. Be part of our festival and enjoy weekend with us.
Iran and the International Committee of the Red Cross discussed urgent humanitarian issues during a visit by the ICRC President Mirjana Spojaric. Our correspondent Turaj Shirelilo brings us more from Tehran.
The President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Spojaric, visited Tehran for discussions on the urgent humanitarian concerns following the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, the ICRC office said. She met with Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, Deputy Foreign Minister for Legal Affairs Kazem Garibabadi, and President of the Iranian Red Crescent Society, Pir Hossein Kolivan, on Wednesday. The ICRC president also visited residential districts and medical centers in the capital Tehran destroyed by the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes. According to official sources, she praised the Iranian Red Crescent for its bravery and expressed deep regret over the loss of lives of citizens and bombing of civilian sites, including schools, hospitals, and residential areas. Foreign Minister Araghchi told the visiting ICRC chief that Iran expects international and humanitarian organizations to fulfill their legal and moral obligations in accordance with the Geneva Conventions of 1949 and condemn the killing of civilians. Also, Deputy Foreign Minister Gharibabadi said that the U.S.-Israeli attacks on 130,000 civilian sites are examples of war crime, adding that international community failed to address appropriately these crimes on humanity. Meantime, Foreign Minister Arafchi held phone calls with his Indian, Polish, and Kenyan counterparts, as well as Speaker of Parliament of Lebanon, on bilateral ties and the latest regional developments. He called for a global condemnation of U.S. blockade of Iran's southern ports, saying Washington and Tel Aviv must be held accountable for the security and economic consequences of their actions. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
In a bid to expand regional trade, Pakistan has initiated its first land route export to Kyrgyzstan, where China's sourced a dry port. Analysts say tapping Central Asian markets could bring in much-needed revenue for an economy dependent on a $7 billion IMF loan program. Here Mustafa reports from Islamabad.
Pakistani officials say the first consignment shipped via the new transit corridor to Central Asia has been successfully cleared, marking a significant step in the country's regional trade ambitions. The shipment, valued at over $60,000 and weighing nearly 24 tons, included a range of goods such as edible oil, tea, herbs, cream, and soap produced by local industrial groups. It was dispatched from Karachi's export processing zone after completing all regulatory clearances and transported through China's sourced dry port. Authorities say the route opens a critical alternative for Pakistani exporters who are now increasingly using this corridor to send products like rice, oranges and potatoes to Central Asian markets. For years, Pakistan has depended on the Chaman and Tokham border crossings to access these landlocked economies via Afghanistan. But those routes have remained closed since October 2025 amid ongoing tensions between Islamabad and Kabul, disrupting trade flows and raising costs for exporters. Industrialists say the new pathway through China not only bypasses these bottlenecks, but also aligns with Islamabad's broader push to diversify its trade routes and reduce dependency on a single transit corridor. Analysts say the timing is crucial with Pakistan's economy under pressure and foreign exchange reserves strained. Expanding access to new markets could provide a much-needed boost. They add that strengthening trade links with Central Asian states, rich in energy and resources, offers long-term strategic and economic benefits, helping Pakistan tap into new demand while enhancing regional connectivity. Hera Mustafa for A News, Islamabad.
Georgia is set for a historic football first, co-hosting a major FIFA youth tournament with Armenia. The milestone puts the South Caucasus on the global stage like never before. A News correspondent Nini Nikolashvili reports.
In a landmark decision by FIFA Council ahead of the 76th FIFA Congress in Vancouver, it has been officially confirmed that Georgia and Armenia will jointly host the FIFA Under-20 World Cup in 2029. The joint bid, first announced in June 2024 in Yerevan by the presidents of the two countries' football federations, has now successfully secured hosting rights for one of the most prestigious youth tournaments in global football. Held every 2 years since 1977, the competition brings together 24 of the world's best young national teams, often showcasing the future stars of the sport. For Georgia, this is a particularly historic achievement. It will be the first time the country hosts a FIFA world-level tournament since gaining independence, placing it firmly on the international football map. Levan Kobiashvili, president of the Georgian Football Federation and a member of the UEFA Executive Committee, described the moment as remarkable, emphasizing both its symbolic and practical importance. He highlighted that the tournament will not only celebrate football but also contribute to the long-term development of the sport in both host countries. While details such as host cities, stadiums and infrastructure plans are yet to be announced, anticipation is already building. With recent experience in hosting international competitions, both nations are expected to deliver a vibrant and memorable tournament. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Young voices are stepping into the global climate conversation as the Youth Forum on UN Global Goals 2026 opens in Istanbul for the first time. With COP31 high on the agenda, the forum is focusing on how the next generation can help shape climate policy, cooperation and sustainable development. Nuray Mustafa has more from Istanbul.
The Youth Forum on UN Global Goals 2026 is being held for the first time in Istanbul, bringing together young people from around the world to engage in important discussions on sustainable development, leadership and global cooperation. This year, the main focus of the forum is directed towards the COP31 climate change agenda, with discussions centered on joint approaches to addressing climate-related challenges. Within the COP31 framework, the key objectives include reducing national carbon emissions, strengthening climate adaptation strategies, and ensuring the active participation of young people in these processes. The choice of Istanbul as the host city is of particular significance. Istanbul has historically served as a bridge between Europe and Asia, making it a strategic hub for international cooperation and dialogue. Hosting discussions on a global issues such as climate change in this setting further enhances the exchange of ideas among young participants from different regions and supports the development of shared solutions.
For the young people, for example, in Ukraine, of course.
United Nations must do something to implement its charter, which is the base of the United Nations. So, without implementing the UN Charter, United Nations cannot achieve these goals, and it will not be good to make a false promise, incorrect promise to the youth.
Reformulating the framework. The first panel session of the day, titled Leadership and Global Cooperation, Advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, a road to COP31, brought together experienced leaders and young delegates to discuss climate diplomacy, international partnerships and progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. This was followed by the workshop Youth as Peacemakers, where participation received training aimed at developing skills in conflict resolution and mediation. In the afternoon, the panel discussion Policy and Innovation, Effective Strategies for CDG Implementation explored innovative approaches and accountability mechanisms for achieving the CDGs with contributions from both experts and young participation. Overall, the forum seeks to empower young people to take a more active role in international cooperation and to contribute innovative solutions to pressing global challenges. Nuray Mustafa for A News, Istanbul, Turkey.
Israeli naval forces have moved to intercept vessels from the global Sumud flotilla as they traveled through the Mediterranean toward Gaza. Activists aboard the flotilla reported communication disruptions and said Israeli ships and drones were operating nearby. Israeli Army radio said naval forces had begun taking control of several vessels far from Israel's coast. The flotilla says it is carrying humanitarian aid and aims to challenge Israel's blockade of Gaza by sea. Israel has maintained the blockade since 2007, citing security concerns. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the Agbairan border delimitation talks and Azerbaijan-Armenia normalization process. See you shortly.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Shaken to its very foundation.
Welcome back to A News. Our top regional story for discussion. In Agveran, delegations led by Shahin Mustafayev and Mayor Grigoryan held a 13th meeting on border delimitation, advancing technical procedures and agreeing to formalize key instructions guiding the process. At the same time, signs of pragmatic engagement are emerging, including ongoing cargo transit through Azerbaijan and even energy supplies to Armenia. Developments that hint at a fragile but evolving normalization process backed by Ilham Aliyev and Nikol Pashinyan. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan is weighing a complete break with the European Parliament over what it calls a biased resolution supporting Armenia. And meanwhile, fresh allegations involving former ICC prosecutor Luis Moreno Ocampo have raised new questions about lobbying and political influence within European institutions. To unpack these developments, I'm joined by Mehmet Öğçü, chairman of the London Energy Club, joining us from London. Mr. Öğçü, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Öğçü, let me start with the broader talks. How significant is this latest meeting in Agveran for the actual delimitation process between Azerbaijan and Armenia? Technical instructions were agreed upon at the meeting. Does this suggest real progress, or are we still at a procedural stage?
Well, I mean, there are very significant issues at the root cause of Armenian-Azerbaijani disputes all along. And I don't think that all of them could be resolved easily. However, small steps like this, I think, is very encouraging and inspiring. And this visit by the Azerbaijani delegation led by Shahin Mustafayev to Armenia, and I think some agreements have been reached on the draft text regarding border demarcation, which is very important because most of the border disputes arise from what has been drawn by the Soviets. It's the Soviet legacy, administrative borders. Now the sovereign borders and internationally recognized borders are critical for any breakthrough between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So far, we had these issues discussed at international tables, mediated by external powers. But what we see right now, Azerbaijan and Armenian delegations sitting around the same table and discussing these issues and agreeing, more or less. I don't think it's going to be very easy because it's deeply, historically also challenging. And also there are a couple of elements which might put these discussions into risk. One is political leaders have to navigate through the public sentiment shaped by nationalist forces. Because both in Azerbaijan and Armenia, some of the political groups might feel that we are giving away something to the other party. But in such negotiations, it has to be give and take, win-win. Otherwise, if only one party wins, the other loses, I don't think it's going to be sustainable. Therefore, political leaders should resist the temptation and pressure coming from their publics, especially ultra-nationalist elements. I'm saying this particularly for the Armenian side. It is very strong, as we know, and Pashinyan is having great difficulty in defending his position domestically. Secondly, not every international player will be happy with what's happening right now, what's unfolding between the two countries. Of course, some regional powers like Turkey, of course, will be very happy that this is happening. So it's going to also open the way for their bilateral normalization. But some other countries like Iran, Russia, may not be so happy that both countries are making progress because they will be losing their leverage on these issues. And technically, it's not easy to redraw maps. There is historical legacies, there are technical issues, and so lots of work needs to be put into that. But I'm very pleased that progress has started. But let's not assume that it's going to move smoothly without any problem. Having started and sitting around the same table, and the mere act of starting redrawing the maps and the borders, I think is very significant, but we should not be over-optimistic. We need some caution in terms of how we are going to move forward. And both leaders, Pashinyan and Aliyev, I think will have to make sure that this process will remain intact and whatever disruptions might come and from wherever directions. The fact that these technical discussions took place and they agreed on some preliminary texts on how the borders should be delimited, demarcated, I think is a very significant progress, no matter how small step is. I think this is the first step. As you know, the marathon starts always with the first step.
Mr. Ochi, if Armenia's leadership says returning ethnic Armenians to Karabakh is not realistic and could undermine peace, how is it appropriate for the European Parliament to continue raising this issue? And what impact could that have on the peace process?
Well, I don't think that Azerbaijan have all the countries represented in European Parliament as friends. There are some anti-Azerbaijani, anti-Turkish forces there, and I think Azerbaijan offered equal rights and citizenship to those Armenians who would like to stay in Nagorno-Karabakh, but tens of thousands of them chose to go back to Armenia, and they have a very strong lobby in European Parliament as well as in US Congress, as we all know, so they will continue pushing for that. I don't think we should pay much attention to all this criticism or declarations coming from international organizations because they don't respect on the realities on the ground. It's usually the diasporas pushing forward, and they have political power, media power, financial power in these countries, and we should be prepared. Such things will come and go. And I think what Azerbaijan has done with regard to Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh is impressive because, you know, as a former diplomat, I witnessed the process of Minsk process to solve the problem for decades. Nothing happened. The French, Germans, US, British, all of them were involved, the Russians, and nothing happened. And then when Azerbaijan took this matter into its hands and using its force and also legitimate rights, things have moved forward. So, of course, we should take into account what the international sentiments, criticism, and calls are for. But I think at the end of the day, it's the strategic interests and the national interests and aspirations of the countries that matter. And we saw a similar criticism on 24th April by the New York mayors, unfortunately. And it was also very much one-sided, ignoring the historic realities and also putting all the blame on one side and equating the other side, the Armenians and the Turks. Therefore, such things will continue to happen. I think we have to continue educating them, increasing awareness and defending the rights and also interests of Azerbaijan and Turkey, for that matter, in international fora, no matter what the result is. I think we cannot avoid it. However, I think we shouldn't leave these fora open and only to anti-Azerbaijan and anti-Turkey forces. And it's not going to go away. The good news is that at least in Armenia, there is very strong political will. The same in Baku by Ilham Aliyev. And I think both nations will progress, move forward towards historic reconciliation and normalization. I think it's going to be win-win for both sides, as you mentioned before we started talking about the transport corridors, strategic corridors, trade, investment, supply chains, whatever will come on the way. And I think after Azerbaijan and Armenia settle their major differences, and Turkey will be coming into picture as well. So Georgia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Armenia will be having a quite productive and win-win, mutually beneficial and respecting sovereignty type of relationships. No matter who on the external side try to disrupt or deviate from this line. And also, I think we should also underline how important it was, the agreement signed in the Oval Office in White House with the mediation of Trump between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I think it's also one of the assurances that this process will carry on.
Mr. Roach, let's turn to Luis Ocampo allegations. Azerbaijani outlet Meanwhile Political claims it has obtained videos involving former international prosecutor Luis Ocampo discussing political goals, including influencing European institutions and removing Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. If proven credible, how damaging could this be for the credibility of European institutions?
Well, already I think European institutions have some sort of reputation being influenced by either ethnic groups or financial interests brought to them. And so this, I think, needs to be looked carefully, investigated. And I think the truth has a habit of coming to the fore at the end of the day, sooner or later. Therefore, I believe that this might be perhaps one of the new cases in which international institutions and legislators being influenced by those paying them or offering some favors. I don't want to, of course, accuse anybody here without having any proofs in our hand, any evidence. But since you have a strong position, I think it will be respected internationally. And if there is any wrongdoing, a practice which is compromising their integrity, I think it will come forward.
Mehmet Özçu, thank you very much for your insights and for joining us. We appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned to A News for more updates.